Hello everyone, my name is Phawx. This is my review on the GPD MicroPC. Very quickly, let's take a look at the specs on this little UMPC. It's running Intel Celeron N4100 SoC, and what that means to you is that this system on a chip is basically an Atom configuration from Intel. Thankfully, from GPD, it comes at a 10-watt TDP configuration. This means that you won't have to do anything on your side, like running throttle stop or anything, to try and extract maximum performance out of that. It'll come straight from the factory to you at this TDP. Additionally, that doesn't mean that it'll constantly use 10 watt. It'll scale down. It'll scale up to what it needs to use. It can run all the way down to 3 watts itself, and it can scale up to 10 watt. And we'll touch base on that in the performance and battery part of this review later on. RAM-wise, we're looking at a single Hynix module. It is 4 gigabytes of LPDDR4 running at 2133 megahertz. The display itself is MIPI DSi. There is no EDP embedded DisplayPort to MIPI adapter, so it's just straight to it. This is causing a small little issue with Linux right now. It is being worked on directly from Canonical. Specifically, someone from Ubuntu Mate is working on this. Right now, it will only be working on Windows 10. The display is portrait style, so that is 720 by 1280 resolution. Wireless side, we're looking at Intel's 3165 D2W. This is their dual band wireless AC 3165. What that means to you is wireless-wise, Wi-Fi-wise, we're looking at 802.11 AC capabilities. As well for Bluetooth, we're looking at 4.2 capabilities. Looking at the audio side, it does have Realtek's ALC269 digital analog converter speaker amplifier, which is reasonably fine. It does have a built-in NIC, and that is using Realtek's 8111H gigabit Ethernet controller, and I have been able to confirm that it will saturate the full gigabit, so I've been able to do 111 megabytes a second on NIC directly attached on the microPC itself. One of the standout features on here that I think a lot of people are going to be having interest in is the Texas Instruments MB3243i multi-channel RS-232 line driver receiver. This is not a virtual serial port. This is an actual factual 2FA serial RS-232 port. I've done a little review on that, and this is kind of video on what that looks like. Last part to round off the spec package is that this is the first low-end, as in $300-ish price tag from GPD that also includes a 2242 M2 slot, and that is replaceable, user replaceable. So that actually is a pretty big feature for these low-end devices, and kind of rounds out one of the better parts of the specs for the microPC. All right, now that we got specs out of the way, the first thing I would like to touch on is build quality, and this is kind of a multifaceted look at build quality, especially when we're talking about it from GPD. Looking at GPD and looking at my pre-production unit of the GPD MicroPC, it is a very well-built pre-production unit. Far better than my GPD Win 2 device. Far better than my GPD Win 2 device. So it is clear that GPD is taking everything they've learned from their previous iterations, the GPD Win 1, the GPD Win 2, the Pocket 1, the Pocket 2. They are clearly taking all the bad parts about it, taking a lot of the community feedback, and making sure that they fix a lot of problems. And there's a lot of things to like about the GPD MicroPC. It has 5-volt support, 15-volt support, 12-volt support. It supports a lot of inputs for charging. The battery is a new manufacturer, so it's a better manufacturer, at least as far as GPD is saying, that they have now aligned themselves with a better battery producer, which is great news. The sleep times is fixed. I've had this device sleep forever and not have any problems. Everything about the unit seems to be solid. From a pre-production standpoint, a lot of the little problems that were apparent on the Win 2 are not present on the GPD MicroPC. Alright, so what type of performance can you expect out of the GPD MicroPC? Again, because GPD is going to be shipping these to you at a 10-watt TDP, it will allow that system to realize its full potential, at the expense of obviously using more battery power. Now, that is to say that while it can use up to 10 watts, it will not use all 10 watts all the time. If it can get by with less, it will do so. So depending on, like, obviously the machine is not a gaming machine, and I do have some performance metrics while it's playing games, and what you should anticipate is a 50% increase compared to other Atom-like platforms, like say the Pocket 1 or the GPD Win 1, which was on Cherry Shell Z8750, and this is now using Celeron's N4100. While they seemingly are different products, they are both at the heart Atom products. The benefit for the N4100 is that it has 4 megabytes of cache instead of 2 megabytes of L2 cache, and that is largely where we're getting those gigantic increases. But again, you're using 60% more power to see those gigantic increases. So 50% better performance, 60% more energy usage. It's kind of worth it in that regard. But again, as you can see here, while we can use 10 watts when we demand it, of the chipset. Even playing other games that are not as taxing, you will use half that power. You'll go to 4.5 watts, 5 watts of power. So basically that is the crux of the situation here, is that we are getting a 50% performance improvement on the CPU compared to other older Cherry Trail chipsets, and that is significant. And actually at this 10 watt TDP, you're able to realize the full power provided with that extra cache that's on there. And it becomes something that borders on usable, at least in my opinion, because a 6 watt TDP for Atom chipsets tend to be choked a little, and it becomes very apparent and feelable with regard to that. But since we are allowed to balloon up to it and have 4 real cores, the distinction becomes a lot blurrier, and the system becomes, at least in terms of feel, readily available. So when you look at it as a package price, again, because the device is only $300 for what you're getting out of it, even though we are kind of being wasteful and piggish in terms of how much energy we're consuming, the actual use of it is pretty nice. It's quite usable, and I would anticipate, again, you shouldn't look at this device as anything like a gaming machine. It is a utility, it is a tool, especially with all of the I/O, the serial port, the durability of the device. But I do know that some people are looking at this UMPC and seeing the power envelope of it and thinking of using this device as a gaming device or something as a multimedia device. So those are the types of things that you should consider, is that when you look at it from a performance angle, when we're looking at this as conclusively from a performance angle, it is actually quite performant for what it is and the price. All right, so now that we know what we can expect out of the performance, and knowing that to reach that performance we're going to be using 10 watts from the SoC alone, the natural question that anyone should be asking is, how does that affect the battery life? And it's very, very simple. Now, a lot of times battery life can seem like mystical or mojo or whatever you want to call it. A lot of times people just like highlight over the battery icon and see that like Windows says you have 12 hours of battery life remaining. That is just bogus. Don't even pay attention to that, because that's just meaningless. It's actually extremely simple to determine the battery life out of any platform. And it kind of boils down to how your usage is, and I'm going to kind of distill that information to you right here. So if we take a look at the battery specs on the GPD MicroPC, it is two 3.7 volt 3100 milliamp hour batteries together in series, which produces one 7.6 volt 3100 milliamp hour battery to the system. What that equals is 23.56 watt hours. So if we know that it's 23.56 watt hours, and we know that we use 11.5 watts in total, complete system, at redlining the machine, putting on like gaming performance, and just trying to extract the most that we can out of the chip and the system in total, we're at 11.5 watts. 2 hours of that is 23 watts. You're only going to have 0.56 watt hour left in the battery. You're at extremely little battery life left, so like 5%. You're going to be getting lots of alerts from the system. You might be shutting it out at this point. So realistically, when you're looking at it, at redlining the machine and full brightness LCD, this is worst case scenario. The worst case scenario for the battery is 2 hours, and that's if you're gunning the machine. Now, conversely, what is the best battery life? What if we put brightness to half and we just do something that we could remotely connect to another machine? I've done that, and I actually did it for 4 hours. I was just organizing my ROMs and stuff on my NAS. So I connected to my NAS and I just remoted around, and for 4 hours, I basically used 40% of the battery. Extrapolating from this, we averaged it out at using 3.5 watt hours in this particular instance, which is really the lowest that the system is going to use almost at an idle state. So if we take that information, we're looking at 6.5 hours, and that is best case scenario. That's your best case scenario. So your worst case is 2 hours, your best case is 6.5 hours. Basically what that means is, in between regular usage, using the browser, YouTube stuff, YouTube is going to be hitting the hardware decoder on the chip. It shouldn't be using CPU to be drawing anything unless you force it to for whatever reason. When you look at it from this angle, the average battery use should be around 4 to 5 hours of battery life, which is really nice for this little device. And to round out what we're talking about is the I/O. Now, I'm going to be talking about the I/O as well as in other forms of input. We're going to be talking about the keyboard as well as the touchpad. And that kind of rounds out with the build quality as well, but I felt like talking about this separately as opposed to general build quality kind of deserved its own little thing. So anyway, let's just talk about that. To come full circle and talk about build and I/O, they're going to kind of intertwine here, but we're going to mention more heavily on I/O here, while still obviously talking about the keyboard input, the touchpad input, how those things feel as opposed to just general build quality, which was kind of separate, and want to just kind of touch base on a little things regarding GPD's quality currently and things that you should just generally be aware of. Speaking of I/O, if we just take a look at the external ports, this thing is stacked. So it does have a real RS-232 port, a real serial port. It's not a virtual port. It's not some type of virtualization going on there. It's not a conversion, not an adapter built in. It's a straight, full-on RS-232 port. It is 2FA COM2, works perfectly, and I've already done a demo of it, and you can see it right here. It's amazing. And for a lot of people that need RS-232, this is frankly a one-of-a-kind device. Outside of that, you do have full HDMI. It is not 2.0, it is 1.4A because it only does 4K at 30 Hz. It doesn't do 4K at 60 Hz. There are 3 USB 3.0 ports. Those are full bandwidth, 2 on the back, 1 on the left-hand side. There is a Type-C that is also 3.0. There is an RJ45 jack, and that's the NIC on the side that is full gigabit. I've been able to saturate that at 110 megabytes a second. You have micro SD XC slot, so 2 terabyte limits is what it is. A current micro SD card can't even approach the limit that it's at. And again, we're still at the same bandwidth limitations that the Win 2 and Pocket 2 have, so you're looking at 85 megabytes a second throughput on this port. There is a lanyard hold. The headphone jack is not a headset jack, so it's not 4-pole, it's only 3-pole, and that's basically the exterior. That's all of the inputs that you have. Regarding the keyboard itself, I've been managing to average around 40 words per minute. I know there are some other reviewers that have managed to do 50-ish words per minute, and that's usually the same dude. He's actually the supplier for GPD. He supplies parts in the US, and he routinely gets 50 words per minute, and he's the current record holder for these UMPC keyboard inputs. Regarding the touchpad when I first got it had a little piece of film on it, and I had removed that, and I thought that would improve the sensor. Every now and again, there will be times when it will seemingly ignore input and or have double input. So that's the only thing that I wanted to kind of address, that there seems to be almost an oleophobic coating on the touchpad itself, and I have had better results by using a little alcohol pad and wiping at it every now and again and just try to increase the sensitivity between my thumb and the touchpad, and that has helped a bit, but every now and again there is some little things about that. On the touchpad itself, there is actually 2 buttons. There is, on the bottom left is left click, on the bottom right is right click. Generally speaking, it doesn't feel the best. It's not something that I actually enjoy using. I prefer tapping, 1 tap for left click and double tap for right click. Additionally, on the left hand side, you have all 3 mouse buttons. You have left mouse button, middle mouse button, and right mouse button. The USB-C port does work as a full-on USB-C port, so you could get yourself a USB-C dock and have even more inputs available to you. Outside of that, you can actually do USB-C out to DisplayPort, and that will get you 4K at 60 Hz, or you can drive 4K at 60 frames a second if you had an actual 4K monitor, and that would be for using it as a 4K monitor as opposed to just playback via HDMI 1.4, which would only obviously do 4K at 30 Hz, which wouldn't be ideal for a 4K monitor to use as a computer. So if you're looking for 4K output, again, you're going to want to go direct out via USB-C via DisplayPort. So I mean, that's it. This is my review on the GPD MicroPC. I mean, it's a worthwhile device. For me particularly, I see this as a tool for system administrators and network administrators. Outside of that, I know that because of the price at $300, it is actually a fairly good price for a UMPC. So if you just wanted something that was UMPC only, looking at it from that point and just having a bunch of ports available to you, I can see it being attractive from that point of view as well. It is a decent-ish laptop. Additionally, GPD's build quality is improving every year, and the build quality on my pre-production unit is really good. So I'm pretty confident that the production quality versions are actually going to still be better than the one that I have, whereas I'm not even sure if there's actually any area where they're bad per se. There are some things that, like outside of just general GPD build quality stuff, I don't have anything that I could say in one particular order. The only thing that I would address is that the keyboard keys, there are some keys that are spaced or put in a weird spot. A lot of times you'll have to be pressing the FN key to press like the apostrophe or the quote key, and that can get, it takes a bit to get used to. It's not the most intuitive. Additionally, the number row key isn't the most intuitive. I find myself kind of having to peck around that area as well. You're not going to be using this to touch type on with your index fingers. For me, it's still a thumb typing device, which isn't too bad because your right thumb will be used for using the touchpad. Overall, I mean, it's a solid little device at a good price. So yeah, that's it. It's a solid little UMPC. As always, thank you for your time, and thanks for watching.